There hasn't been.
All right, let's bring in Michael McCann. He's our legal analyst. And, Michael, you've been up on this story as well. We heard Robert Kraft, the spokesman, come out and say that they categorically deny it. What kind of defense do you think they can mount against something like this?
Well, one defense would be that he didn't do it, that he would argue that he wasn't there, that the allegation that he was caught on tape is erroneous, that it's not him. Certainly the police claim that they have videotape of everyone who was caught in the sting operation. He might argue that it's not him on tape. Secondly, even if it is him on tape, we don't know what the video shows. Does it show him committing any kind of crime, or does it just show him near the facility? Now, it would be pretty damning if he's going in and out of a place where there was prostitution, but that's one possible defense. He could also argue that he was brought into this through no fault of his own, that he was entrapped is sometimes the defense. Entrapment's a very hard defense to work, that he was somehow induced into going. That seems unlikely given that from what the police say that he went there twice. If he went there once and saw what was going on, he probably wouldn't have gone back the second time if he was concerned by it.
Now, we saw a statement before by the NFL. It was very short. In fact, it was even shorter than the statement from Robert Kraft's spokesperson. But what type of response from the NFL would you expect? We've already talked about some of the other punishment owners have received, whether it's Jim Irsay or Jerry Richardson. This is a unique situation, but what would you expect from the league?
Well, I think the league will react cautiously at the start because Roger Goodell doesn't want to punish Robert Kraft and then for it to turn out that he isn't guilty. Right, that would be pretty disastrous for Goodell, and there's no need to rush into a punishment. This isn't a situation where there's a player who will appear on the field and he's alleged of something very awful. This is an owner whose role is not as a parent. Obviously, Kraft is a pretty public figure, but at the same time, there isn't a rush to punish him. He doesn't play in games. So I think the NFL will be cautious, and I think they'll do their own due diligence. As you know, as you mentioned, there have been other owners who have gotten in trouble, but some of the potential punishments that we've seen on social media, losing the team, that's just not really plausible in the sense that if we look at the history of how the league has applied the Constitution, we haven't seen that happen. Plus, it would take 23 of the other 31 ownership groups to vote somebody out. I don't think they're going to do it for a misdemeanor offense. Certainly, this is a troubling story given that it's connected to human trafficking, but we should separate what Kraft is accused of doing and the larger context of the story. So, and also loss of draft picks, I think some have talked about that. I don't see that happening either because the NFL Constitution talks about loss of draft picks when there's a competitiveness issue in terms of games. That's not the case here. This is an owner who's accused of personal misconduct in his own capacity. So if we see a punishment, I think it would be something along the lines of a fine for Robert Kraft or perhaps a suspension.
Could the president, Donald Trump, get involved in this? Some sort of presidential pardon or something like that?
Well, the president could get involved from an advocacy perspective, but a pardon wouldn't help out Robert Kraft, and that's because the president's pardon power is limited to federal crimes. This is a state charge. So if Robert Kraft somehow down the line faces federal charges related to this, I don't think that's going to happen, but in theory, then the president could play a role. But right now, the president's role is limited to advocating for Kraft to whatever value that has.
All right, Michael McCann, we'll have much more with him coming up later tonight on Town Fair Tire, Boston Sports Tonight. Set your alarms, your reminders. It's 9 o'clock with Holly, Danielle, and DJ Bean. You can watch it on NBC.